Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. Mathew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Magic 87.6. Let's talk some tech with Mathew Dickerson. Morning.
Good morning. Great to be chatting to you, Andrew. Great to be chatting about tech, and tech.
Now, maybe I should have started this segment with, "Hey, Matt," and then you could have told me what's going on, or maybe just, I don't know, I can't just start it with a single name, you know what I mean? Like, it's just weird if I just started the segment and went, "Matt."
So it's an interesting issue. Would I have answered to you if you just said Matt, or would you have needed to say, "Hey, Matt"? And this is the issue that Apple has at the moment. They're a bit worried that some of their competition's getting ahead of them, and it's a bit clumsy to have to say two words, three syllables. "Hey, Siri," and I apologise to all those people out there listening to your radio station who now have a phone who has responded to what I said on the radio. But Apple wants to change that, and they want to have people use just the Siri rather than the "Hey, Siri," and that just triggered phones out there again. Sorry about that again.
Yeah.
And this is following on from Alexa, because you used to say, "Hey, Alexa," but now it's just Alexa. Google still says, "Okay, Google," or "Hey, Google." Do you think we've managed to trigger everyone's smartphone device now, smart device?
Everyone's cheesed off with us this morning. Doesn't matter what you got.
And even good old Microsoft, before they canned Cortana, had "Hey, Cortana" reduced to Cortana or Cortana. Cortana, I think it's Cortana. So it's interesting that Apple has now said they want to use or drop the word "hey" from there just to keep up with the competition and make it easier. Is it really that hard to say, "Hey, Siri"? Is it really that big an issue? Is this a first world problem, if ever I've heard a first world problem?
I know, right? Are we too lazy to use one syllable? Hey.
It does seem like that, doesn't it?
All right, now, I haven't gotten to the stage where I need body parts replaced, Matt. I've got a few body parts taken out, but apparently now we're getting custom knees done.
Custom knees done. And this is the thing, that one of the things that's interesting is that at the moment, if you were to go in and you had your surgeon that wasn't right up to date with things, then if you went in to have a new knee, for example, they'd rip apart your current knee and they'd have a series of knee replacements sitting there on the bench, and they'd say, "Oh, look at that. Andrew looks like he's about a size 4 knee. That seems close enough. We'll whack that in there." Now, last year, there were 62,500 knee replacements done on people in Australia. Of those, 20% were unsatisfactory. That seems like a lot to me. Now, I haven't had a knee replacement, but I've talked to people that have had single or both knees replaced, and they say the pain afterwards is excruciating. So I don't know that I'd want to have the knee replacement done and then come out and go, "You know what, I think you put a size 4 in and I think I'm a size 3. Do you want to go back in and do it again?" The option they've got now to replace that is, before you have your surgery, it kind of makes sense, you get a 3D CT scan done so it maps your current knee out incredibly accurately. They send that plan, that scan, over to a company in America. They 3D print a new knee for you, ship that over on an air courier to Australia. You go and have the operation, they pull out your old knee, they're whacking the new one that's identical to your old one except new and shiny rather than old and worn out. And you then have a knee that fits, it feels better, you've got better time to recovery, you've actually got less surgery time because you're not sitting there trying to work out which knee to put in, all these great benefits. And it actually, you think it might be dearer, but it actually saves each per knee about $300 to $700 because you're spending less time for the surgeon to be in there so he can pump through more surgeries in a day. Sounds incredible. Where are we going to stop with printing body parts? Where are we going to stop with printing anything with 3D? It seems like we'll be printing humans with 3D before we know it.
Well, someone in the 80s managed to print a 3D Kelly LeBrock, so that was a pretty good effort, that one. I still can't get over watching that one as a kid.
Yeah, maybe it was a bad example. Maybe I led into that a bit too
maybe
in the wrong direction for you. I'm sorry about that. I apologise to all your listeners out there.
You did mention the word cheap, Matt, and you know what? For the ethnics out there that have to go get hip replacements, that's a magic word, and knee replacements cheap. Because, anything they got to pay money. I can't believe this. I don't need this. Do I really need this?
Well, and I don't know they've actually got this ready to go for hips yet. They're only talking about knees at this stage.
Give it time.
Give it time, that's right. There's fewer than 20 surgeons in this nation, though, that can actually do this, that are actually capable of doing this at this stage. So when you go to get your knees replaced, just check on it and make sure they can actually do 3D versions.
Absolutely. All right. So we know smartphones can do a lot, but what's the latest feature that smartphones can actually detect?
Well, I reckon they could probably use it in Mudgee on your pedestrian bridge. What some researchers did, let's go back a step. When you look at a normal bridge that's been up for a period of time, there's maintenance that happens on that bridge. Even though you think it's a big concrete and steel structure, they do actually perform maintenance, and they check things by putting sensors on the bridge or taking photographs of certain parts of that bridge, but they do actually do some maintenance on it. And some researchers thought, gee, we spend a lot of time doing maintenance. Is there a better way to do it? So they mounted a smartphone with all the accelerometers in a new modern smartphone. They mounted a smartphone in a car and they drove across a number of bridges hundreds of times to get information about the state of those bridges, compared that to their traditional methods, and found that this was quite a good way to measure things. But they then went a step further. And they said, well, hold on, rather than us go and drive around all these bridges with a smartphone mounted in our car, why don't we use smartphones that are already out there? So they did a deal with Uber and they put an app on a bunch of Uber drivers' phones. As they drove around, they were automatically recording this information, and they found that even though it wasn't mounted in a car the same way as their test one was, they got the data that was within 3% accuracy compared to the model where it was mounted in the car. So the logical thing to do here is you have a bunch of people out there, use the crowd, have a bunch of people out there that have got phones, you've got the app on their phone, and they're constantly sending this data back to report on the state of various bridges. Obviously, it uses GPS tags to know where you are. So when you do all that, combine all that data, they estimate that older bridges can go an extra 2 years before they need servicing because you've got more accurate data, and newer bridges can go 15 years extra before they need service. So that all sounds fantastic, but I just do think of your pedestrian bridge over there in Mudgee, and I just wonder what would happen to the accelerometers across that, especially if you ran across that with a crowd. That might be very interesting.
You've just mentioned the war twice then, Matt. The suspension bridge that goes over to Glen Willow. You notice that I've remained rather quiet about that subject?
I almost broke my ankle, and I went for a run one day around your beautiful river foreshore and went down to that particular pedestrian bridge and started running. And as I'm going to go down, the bridge is bouncing up and just about cracked my ankle in half.
Oh, wow. There you go. Wow.
It's a dangerous bridge. When you walk on it, it gets a bit of a wobble up. When you run on it, it gets out of control.
Yeah, I tried to take Buddy over it. Even Buddy refused to go over it. So, you know what? If a dog won't walk over the suspension bridge at Glen Willow, you know there's trouble, right?
That's right.
That's exactly right. All right. Now, what's this smart home? Is it Matter?
Yeah, so Matter is a big deal. Matter does matter, boom, boom, excuse the pun. Matter is a group of companies that are getting together with a standard for the smart home. One of the big issues with the smart home now is you can go in and you can see some cool devices that you can set up in your smart home, and you come home and you bring these in and you plug them in, and their lights or their light switches or their thermostats, but the problem is that none of them talk to each other. And this is a major issue, and trying to get all these different devices. So you don't want to have a whole bunch of different apps. You don't want to have different ways to run your smart home. So the smart home of the future hasn't really taken off at this stage. So what different companies are looking at is saying, how do we get all these devices to talk together? So Matter is really a standard of protocols to get everything to talk nicely so that you can have one app, one way to run everything, and they'll all talk to each other. Now, there was a huge launch of Matter and a few devices the other day, but it's still a long way to go before we're there. And you've still got a few companies who are arguing about some of the standards. What should we do? I don't really want to talk to you because you're one of my fierce competitors, even though we've agreed on this Matter standard. So keep an eye out. You'll see devices that are out now with the Matter logo on there. So you think, well, that's a good sign. There's someone that at least is trying to get all these different devices to interoperate, but it's still got some way to go, so don't get too excited about it yet. I actually, when we built our home 23 years ago, I actually fitted it all for a bunch of smart devices. And the great part about that is that still works at the moment, but it is locked into that one system. So if I want to make any changes to it, I've got to use that same brand for all of the devices that I add into my smart home. So I can live with that at the moment. Sometimes I do see some cool devices. I go, oh, that looks pretty cool. Oh, but I've backed one standard, so I've got to stick to this particular standard. So Matter will try to get all those things working together.
Someone better hurry up and get this working, because apparently George Jetson gets born this year. And if you've seen the Jetsons, all the stuff that's in George Jetson's house, if he hasn't got that, Matt, I reckon he's going to be cheesed off, especially his wife, Jane.
That's right. Well, if he's only been born this year, so that was George's date of birth, was it 2023?
Something like that, yeah.
If he's only been born now, he's still got a few years till he grows up. So maybe we've got another 20 or 30 years, because George was, a little bit older in the show, in the cartoon. So maybe we've got a few years up our sleeve.
It could be. By the time his boy Elroy comes here, we've still got another 40 years, I reckon.
Yeah. I get the feeling sometimes with some of these technologies that it's always 5 years away. It's been 5 years away for the last 40 years. And I wonder whether smart homes have been a bit like that. It's coming. It's almost here. You've almost got this capability, but soon we'll have it by Christmas. They just don't say which Christmas.
Yeah. Instagram, it's debuting a new feature.
It is debuting a new feature. One of the things, surprisingly enough, is that some people lie about their age on Instagram.
Yeah.
Now, they mainly lie about their age because they're, and I'm being a bit stereotypical here, they're young teenage males under the age of 18, and they want to look at adult content. Now, I'm sure there's other reasons people lie about their age as well, but it's the modern version of young kids, not me, of course, but friends of mine when I was growing up used to go to the newsagent and try and convince the news agency that they were over 18 so they could buy that magazine that had some interesting pictures in there. So the modern equivalent is you just lie about your age. You put in a date of birth, that means you're over 18, and then you can access adult content on Instagram. Now, Instagram has gotten onto this, and there's been a few court cases about this, about letting kids see adult content. So now when you're accessing Instagram and accessing adult content, you've got to prove you're over 18, and you've got to do that typically uploading some ID or get three other adult users to vouch for you to say, yes, he really is an adult. But what they're doing now is using some AI and video selfies to actually show that you are a certain age. So you've got to take a video of yourself, upload that to Instagram, and then AI pops in and says, it looks like Andrew is 29 years of age. And so they get they get it pretty accurate. When they've done some tests, compared real world tests or real tests with humans or finding out the real ID age compared to AI, they found that 6 to 12-year-olds, and I'll come back to the age in a minute, 6 to 12-year-olds, they've been accurate to within 1.36 years, and 13 to 19-year-olds is 1.52 years. Now, the reason we're going down to 6 to 12-year-olds is that there's two age limits of significance in social media. One is 18, because you need to be 18 or over to access adult content. So that's step one, you need to be 18. Step two is to even be on a social media site, you need to be at least 13. And I have seen people where I've seen their age come up and I've said, oh, I didn't think you were 21. I thought you were 19. And they say, oh, yeah, back when I was 11 years old, I wanted to access a social media site, so I had to lie about my age and put it up by a couple of years. So people do that. But again, now, if you did that, you'd need to upload a video selfie and it would get your age accurate to within those timeframes. So it might mean that a 17-year-old gets access to some adult content using the AI to get their age approximately right. But it's better than now, where in the past people have just put any date of birth they wanted in and said, there you go, and away they've gone and accessed whatever information they want.
By the time a modern kid is 17 years old, Matt, he's probably seen more real-life adult content than he's actually bloody seen on the internet back in the day.
Who do you hang around? You hang around some interesting people, it sounds like.
Come on. I was 15 and got into my first nightclub. Didn't you ever get squeezed behind a couple of fellas? And I was 17 years old. And I don't know if I told you this story. I was 17 years old and I was on my own on the Gold Coast. And I stayed at a backpackers and I met a Canadian guy. And he was trying to chat up this South African bird. And we were drunk because he got me into places. And we ended up on Surfers Paradise Beach and he talked her into going skinny dipping. And she looked at me and she said, are you coming? And I freaked. At 17 years old, she's standing there in front of me, butt naked. This is what I mean. We've all said, did I go skinny dipping? Absolutely not.
But you feel free to go ahead. Don't let me stop you.
I should have. I still kick myself to this day that I didn't go skinny dipping, but I thought I was, infringing on the Canadian guys' kind of turf. See, this is what I mean. I saw more in real life at the age of 17 than I ever saw on the internet or in a bloody Penthouse forum.
Well,
I should have wrote the Penthouse forum story. Dear Penthouse forum, you're not going to believe what happened to me.
And they wouldn't believe it. They'd say, what? 17-year-old boy said no?
Yes, to a hot South African backpacking chick on the Gold Coast. It was the 90s, for heaven's sakes. See, I was innocent once, Matt. I was innocent.
Indeed.
That's what it was.